You might be looking at your screen right now as a massive bomb explodes, leaving a giant, terrifying mushroom cloud towering into the sky, and wondering, what on earth was that? Yeah, it looks incredibly scary. You've probably seen it somewhere on TV, on the news, or in a history book. But what exactly is it? And why is literally everyone on the planet so terrified of it? What if I were to tell you that when this was first built, the scientists calculating the math genuinely thought there was a chance it could ignite the atmosphere and destroy the entire Earth? I know, you probably already have an idea of what I'm talking about. You guessed it right. The hand grenade. I'm just joking. Of course, it was the atomic bomb. But to understand how we got to the point where humanity could delete an entire city in a microsecond, we have to go way back in time. We have to look at the secret agreements, the terrifying physics, and the ultimate betrayals that unleashed the most destructive force in human history. Chapter 1. The Warning and the Physics. To understand how a weapon of this magnitude was ever built, we have to go back to a quiet, terrifying realization 6 years before the first bomb was ever dropped. In August 1939, just weeks before Adolf Hitler ordered the invasion of Poland to start World War II, a Hungarian-born physicist named Leo Szilard was gripped by a suffocating panic. Szilard and his colleagues had recently realized that nuclear fission, the splitting of a uranium atom, was not just a theoretical math problem. It was physically possible. And if it was possible, it could be weaponized. Even worse, the physicists making the biggest breakthroughs in this field were working inside Nazi Germany under the brilliant scientist Werner Heisenberg in what was known as the Uranium Club. Szilard knew that if Hitler acquired an atomic bomb, the war would be over before it even began. Desperate, he drafted a letter and drove to Long Island, New York, to get it signed by the most famous scientist on the planet, Albert Einstein. The letter was delivered directly to U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt. It warned that extremely powerful bombs of a new type may thus be constructed. That single letter initiated what would become the Manhattan Project. But what exactly is nuclear fission? How does splitting something invisible create an explosion that can level a city? Let's break it down simply. Imagine you are standing in an empty room, and you cover the entire floor with thousands of set mousetraps. On top of every single mousetrap, you place 2 ping-pong balls. This room represents a block of uranium-235. Now, you stand at the doorway and throw just 1 ping-pong ball into the center of the room. It hits a trap, which snaps and throws 2 more balls into the air. Those 2 balls land on 2 more traps, throwing 4 balls into the air. Then 8, then 16. Within milliseconds, the entire room is a violent, chaotic storm of flying plastic. In physics, that is called a runaway chain reaction. When you split a single uranium atom, it releases energy and shoots out neutrons, which split the atoms next to it, releasing more energy, exponentially, until the sheer force of that unleashed energy violently tears apart the atmosphere. Pulitzer Prize-winning historian Richard Rhodes, in his definitive book, The Making of the Atomic Bomb, describes this period as a frantic race in the dark. The Americans didn't know how far along the German Uranium Club was. They just knew they had to get there first.
Chapter 2. The Secret City and the Agreement. Building an atomic bomb wasn't just a science experiment. It was the largest, most expensive, and most secretive industrial undertaking in human history. To turn the ping-pong ball theory into a deliverable weapon, the United States government spent over $2 billion, roughly $34 billion today. They employed over 130,000 people across massive secret facilities in Tennessee, Washington State, and New Mexico. The military director of this behemoth was General Leslie R. Groves, a ruthless, results-driven Army engineer who had just finished building the Pentagon. But to lead the scientific side, Groves made a controversial choice: a brilliant, complex theoretical physicist named J. Robert Oppenheimer. Groves and Oppenheimer built a secret city from scratch on a remote mesa in Los Alamos, New Mexico. They brought in the greatest minds in the free world. But they didn't do it entirely alone. In 1943, the United States and the United Kingdom signed the secret Quebec Agreement. It was a formal pact to pool their resources, merge the British Tube Alloys atomic project with the Manhattan Project, and agree never to use the weapon against each other or a third party without mutual consent. This agreement brought a delegation of brilliant British scientists directly into the heart of Los Alamos. But unknown to Oppenheimer, unknown to General Groves, and unknown to the FBI, the Quebec Agreement had also opened the front door to the greatest betrayal of the 20th century. Chapter 3. The Shadow Within. While the Allies were terrified of Nazi Germany building the bomb, they completely overlooked their own uneasy ally, the Soviet Union. Soviet Premier Joseph Stalin knew about the Manhattan Project before Harry Truman, the Vice President of the United States, did. And he knew because the British delegation at Los Alamos included a quiet, unassuming German-born theoretical physicist named Klaus Fuchs. Fuchs was a brilliant mathematician who had fled the Nazis and gained British citizenship. He was completely trusted at Los Alamos, calculating the highly complex implosion dynamics needed for the plutonium bomb. But Klaus Fuchs was secretly a deeply committed communist. Driven by his own ideological belief that a capitalist American monopoly on the atomic bomb would lead to global tyranny, Fuchs made a quiet, devastating decision. As documented by historian John Earl Haynes in his extensive research on the Venona Project, the secret American effort to decrypt Soviet intelligence cables, Fuchs began smuggling the blueprints of the apocalypse out of the secret city. Fuchs would take weekend leave, drive his beat-up car to Santa Fe, and meet with an American courier working for the Soviets named Harry Gold. In quiet cafes and on bridge overpasses, Fuchs handed over envelopes filled with exact hand-drawn schematics of the atomic core, mathematical equations, and production timelines. Decades later, during his confession to British intelligence, Fuchs tried to explain the intense psychological compartmentalization required to betray the people he worked alongside every day. He said, "I used my Marxist philosophy to establish in my mind two separate compartments, one compartment in which I allowed myself to make friendships, and another compartment in which I was completely independent of the surrounding forces." Fuchs's betrayal fundamentally altered the timeline of the Cold War. When the Soviet Union detonated its first atomic bomb in 1949, it was an almost exact carbon copy of the bomb built at Los Alamos. The American monopoly was shattered, and the global nuclear standoff had begun. Chapter 4. The Terrible Decision. By the spring of 1945, the physics of the war had shifted. Nazi Germany surrendered in May. The original target of the atomic bomb was defeated. But in the Pacific, the Empire of Japan refused to yield. Following the sudden death of Franklin Roosevelt, Harry S. Truman was sworn in as president. He was immediately briefed on a weapon he had never even heard of. He was now faced with the most heavily debated military decision in human history: drop the bomb or invade Japan. American military planners had drawn up Operation Downfall, a massive amphibious invasion of the Japanese home islands. Based on the horrific casualty rates from battles like Iwo Jima and Okinawa, the U.S. War Department estimated that an invasion could result in hundreds of thousands, perhaps up to 1 million American casualties, and countless millions of Japanese deaths. To understand why the bomb was ultimately dropped, it helps to look at the concept of political momentum. Imagine the Manhattan Project as a massive, multi-billion-dollar freight train hurtling down a track. For 3 years, 130,000 people shoveled coal into the engine. Entire cities were built to keep it moving. By the summer of 1945, the train had reached its destination, and the politicians and generals in charge realized that no one had ever designed a set of brakes. The political, financial, and military momentum to use the weapon, once it was proven to work, was practically unstoppable. But historians fiercely debate the true motivation behind the drop. Some, like military historian Richard B. Frank in his book Downfall, argue that the Japanese military command had absolutely no intention of surrendering, and that the bombs were a grim military necessity to save millions of lives. Others, like historian Gar Alperovitz, argue for the concept of atomic diplomacy. They suggest Japan was already on the brink of collapse, and that Truman dropped the bombs not just to end the war, but to demonstrate American absolute power to a watching, aggressive Soviet Union. In July 1945, the Allies issued the Potsdam Declaration, demanding Japan's unconditional surrender and promising prompt and utter destruction if they refused. Japan ignored the ultimatum. Truman gave the order. Chapter 5: The Flash and the Fallout. On the morning of August 6, 1945, the weather over the Japanese city of Hiroshima was clear and warm. At 8:15 a.m., a single American B-29 bomber, the Enola Gay, released a uranium bomb nicknamed Little Boy. It detonated 1,900 feet above a surgical clinic, perfectly maximizing the destructive spread of the blast wave. The human reality of that microsecond is almost impossible to comprehend. Dr. Michihiko Hachiya, a hospital director in Hiroshima, was lying on his living room floor when the bomb detonated. In his acclaimed memoir, Hiroshima Diary, he provided one of the most vital, haunting eyewitness accounts of the immediate aftermath. He didn't hear an explosion. He just saw a blinding flash, and then found himself suddenly staring at the sky. His house had instantly collapsed around him. Dr. Hachiya wrote about the terrifying, silent reality of the destroyed city. The shortest path to the street lay through the house next door, so through the house we went. Getting to my feet, I discovered that I had tripped over a man's head. The street was filled with dead and dying. They were moving, but they were as silent as the dead. No one spoke. No one wept. The blast instantly vaporized tens of thousands of people. The resulting firestorm consumed the city. 3 days later, on August 9th, a plutonium bomb nicknamed Fat Man, the exact complex design stolen by Klaus Fuchs, was dropped on the city of Nagasaki. In total, an estimated 200,000 people died from the blasts and the subsequent radiation poisoning. On August 15th, Emperor Hirohito addressed the Japanese people over the radio for the first time in history, announcing their surrender. In his speech, he cited the terrible new reality of the world. The enemy has begun to employ a new and most cruel bomb, the power of which to do damage is, indeed, incalculable. Should we continue to fight, not only would it result in an ultimate collapse and obliteration of the Japanese nation, but also it would lead to the total extinction of human civilization. The war was over. But the terrifying shadow of the mushroom cloud had just fallen over the earth. Chapter 6: Why This Still Matters. When J. Robert Oppenheimer watched the first test detonation in the desert, he felt a sense of relief that the math had worked. But years later, he was deeply haunted by what he had set in motion. In a meeting with President Truman after the war, Oppenheimer quietly said, "Mr. President, I feel I have blood on my hands." Truman was disgusted by the remark, but Oppenheimer understood what the politicians often refused to see. The atomic bomb didn't just win a war, it permanently altered the trajectory of the human race. Today, there are 9 nations that possess nuclear weapons. The geopolitical standoffs we see on the news today are all fundamentally governed by the exact same physics discovered in the 1940s. The treaties that limit these weapons, the espionage used to track them, and the lingering threat that any major conflict could end the world are not relics of the past. They are the invisible architecture of the world we currently live in. The story of the atomic bomb is the ultimate proof that human brilliance and human destruction are separated by a razor-thin line. It is a story of incredible scientific achievement, devastating betrayal, and a moral burden that humanity will carry forever. If you want to keep exploring the massive, history-altering collisions that built our modern world, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Want to see more videos like this? Please comment on what you would like to see next.